Good evening. We're back with a Marvel Snap video. This will be a belated look at the patch from 2 days ago. I think it's worth talking about because it continues a trend that is a bit disturbing in terms of the game's monetization that I've seen. But let's talk about the good first. We've got Kitty Pryde returning. That's good. And they're giving Kitty Pryde to all players for anybody who had an account created before May 16th. For any account created after May 16th, she is available in Series 5. Okay. Well, bummer for new players. Deck cosmetics customization. Tried it out. Don't like it at all because it slows down cycling through decks. And it seems like that's probably just to try to sell their cosmetics, the avatars and titles. Most of the decisions they seem to be making in these patches, in terms of which cards are getting upgraded or which cards are getting buffed, which cards are getting nerfed, seem to be based on which cards they would like to sell better or maximizing the sales of a card for as long as they possibly can before nerfing it. And that doesn't feel great as a player. I'm used to, maybe it's old-fashioned, but I'm used to, well, with Star Wars CCG, when a card got nerfed, or errated, they would call it, not nerfed, when you're talking about physical cards, it was never because of monetization reasons. Like, they had their model, which was, the CCG model. You buy packs of cards, they're randomized. So they weren't trying to sell individual cards. And so, like, buffing a specific card so that people would try to buy packs of random cards to get it probably wasn't even an option with the CCG model. But it is with this game. And they're doing it. And they're waiting to nerf cards until they drop from Series 4 or 5 to 3. And that doesn't sit well for players, I don't think. That's really going to hurt the game's popularity in the long run. It feels... At first, when I started playing this game, it felt like this was going to be different from mobile games, which tend to be very exploitive in their monetization. But it turns out this isn't going to be different. It's going to be very exploitive in its monetization, and that's going to hurt the game's popularity. It's going to hurt the competitive scene in the long run. The seasonal series drops. Some cards have dropped down to a lower series, cards dropping from Series 5 to 4. Master Mold, Negasonic, and Nimrod. Series 4 to 3, Sentry, Silver Surfer, Dazzler, Shadow King, Sauron, and Ghost. Sentry is probably the best of those. Master Mold has a decent deck you can build around him. Negasonic and Nimrod you can feel free to leave alone. Silver Surfer, it's a middling tier deck now. Dazzler's garbage. Shadow King is garbage. Sauron is now garbage in the post-Shuri era, and it was never that good. Ghost maybe has a niche use, but probably not worth spending tokens on. But cards staying in Series 4 are noteworthy. That would be Darkhawk and Null, because those cards were scheduled to drop in tier based on the pattern that's been established for when cards will drop from Series 5 to 4 and then 4 to 3. Everyone was expecting Darkhawk and Null to drop from Series 4 to 3 on May 16th, which is why I think they made a special note that those cards are not dropping. And as you might notice if you're familiar with this game and you glance at this list, Darkhawk and Null are the most powerful of the cards that were scheduled to drop. So they held back the two most powerful cards, and they dropped everything else. And that doesn't sit well with players. It just feels exploitive. There's no way around it, and there's always a relationship between a game designer and players. in any art form, there's a relationship between an artist and the patrons of the arts, between a writer and an author, or between an author and a reader, between a filmmaker and the viewer. There's a relationship. There's a certain amount of trust. For example, when you start reading a book and the author uses his skill as a writer to establish characters that you care about, you're trusting that he or she is going to bring the story to a satisfying conclusion. And when that trust is broken, it's painful to the reader or to the watcher of a movie or to the person playing the game. When the artist or the author brings a story to a conclusion that is not satisfying, and it feels like they tried their best and just missed the mark, well, I can forgive that. I think most people can. It's not great. We don't like it. We get mad. But if they made a genuine attempt and it wasn't good, people can forgive that. When you make a disingenuous attempt, that's hard to forgive. Like the ending of Game of Thrones was hard to forgive because it felt disingenuous. It felt rushed. It felt lazy. It felt like they wanted to be somewhere else and not making Game of Thrones anymore, the writers. They threw away the rules they'd previously established about how long travel took. They forgot details. They changed characters. It was a laundry list of things that you shouldn't do when you're ending a story, because it breaks trust with your audience and they get mad, and they should get mad about that. What I'm getting at here is that the designers of this game formed a relationship with their players when they released the game, and that relationship was based on a certain amount of trust. And what we were trusting as players is that this was not going to be an exploitative monetization system. And the reason that we had some reason to believe that this was going to be the case, because at first it didn't seem like it was very exploitive. And I'm not sure what the developers actually said about this, but I saw lots of people in the community who believed as I did that this was not going to be an exploitive game. And so we put our time and our money and invested emotionally into the game. We learned to play it. We promoted it, some of us, on Reddit, on content creators promoted it. And then we spent some money. At least I didn't spend a lot of money, but I bought the battle pass every month, and I felt good about doing it at the time. And now it seems clear that that trust has been broken between the developer and the player, and it's going to continue to be broken whenever it pleases them. This keeping the Darkhawk and Null in Series 4 is just the latest example. I would also point to nerfing cards only after they drop to Series 3, after they've extracted every bit of money that they can out of them. I would point to the deck cosmetics, which seem designed to promote their cosmetics and get people to buy them at the expense of usability, because it makes scrolling through decks clunky and slower. And that may seem like a minor thing, but when you add it to the list of things, it adds up to broken trust between developer and player. And that does not bode well for the game at all. That's gonna currently what a lot of the posts I see on the subreddit are angry, and they have every right to be. So the future of the game does not look good if you can't trust the developers, and it does not appear that we can. They are going to attempt to hold us upside down and shake us until all the coins fall out of our pockets, and that does not feel good. For the rest of the patch notes, general updates. Ranked mode. The number of cubes required to rank up have decreased from 10 to 7. The number of bonus ranks gained when tiering up has been reduced from 5 to 3. I don't know what difference that makes. I'll have to look at the math. We're continuing to make adjustments to rank mode that will improve the overall experience for players. I'm not sure how that's designed to improve the experience. The changes coming with this patch feature some adjustments to the matchmaking algorithm and updates to the number of cubes ranks while progressing through the season. What updates to the algorithm? I'm curious about that. There are more changes planned for future patches. When purchasing an item from the shop, you must now press and hold the button to confirm your purchase. This should help remove any accidental purchases. That's good. Added Series 1 and Series 2 labels to cards from those series. Okay. Voiceover, general updates, balance updates. This is a light week relative to the excitement of recent patches. The metagame as April ended featured a diverse metagame with healthy win rates and cube gain rates and only a couple small popularity outliers. We'll have more news for you soon on the future of our OTA balance patches, but today is mostly just a couple card reworks. Kitty Pride released with new design. You can return this to your hand to gain +2 power. When this returns to your hand, +2 power returns at the start of each turn. This is a very powerful card. I have no issue with the remake. The original design just didn't work with their software, I guess. And the remake does, and it's a powerful card. It's going to find its way into a lot of decks. She'll be awarded to all active cards today, and she'll be Series 5. Sucks for new players. Crystal, old, 4/4 on reveal. If this is at the middle location, shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 3. New, 4/4 on reveal. Each player draws a card. I don't see it getting played any more than it used to with this new stats and ability. Crystal has been one of a handful of cards seeing incredibly low play and win rates for quite some time now, and an obvious buff candidate. We debated maintaining the direction of the current effect by removing the middle restriction, increasing the cards drawn, etc. But the tricky thing is that we don't want an effect like Crystal's to be strong. Snap decks are only 12 play cards, and we don't want those cards to play out the same time every time. Sure, they don't want to reduce RNG. They've been pretty clear about that. They want high RNG. So we're very careful about letting players draw cards. This rework aimed to make a simple, appropriate Crystal that could be fun alongside a variety of cards. Like maybe with Ronin, but I don't really see a use for Crystal anymore with the new Crystal than the old. Wave, old, 3/3 on reveal next turn. Cards in both players' hands cost 4. New, 3/3 on reveal. All cards cost 4 until the end of next turn. Wave's cost reduction occurs after other effects that reduce card costs. This is going to kill several Series 3 decks. Death Wave, Doom Wave being the primary ones, while not affecting Galactus. Because of course they wouldn't do anything to hurt Galactus. He's a Series 5 card. They're always going to make nerfs to Series 3 decks and not to Series 4 or 5, and they'd probably like to continue nerfing Series 3 decks until there are no strong Series 3 decks, or any decks that can compete with decks that have Series 4 or Series 5 cards. In addition to a text update that clarifies when Wave's effect begins, we've also made a rather large adjustment under the hood. Wave will now begin to apply after effects that reduce card costs rather than before. That means She-Hulk, Death, etc. will always cost 4 while Wave is in effect. We don't take lightly that this change kills a few decks, but Wave has been far too constraining on our ability to use cost reduction as a synergy reward in future designs. Oh, poor you. Leaning on Wave is just always better than dedicating your deck to the actual synergy. We've seen that with Death since both cards went live, and we'll continue seeing it without this action. Yikes. Yet another Series 3 deck nerfed into the ground. Add it to the list. That list would feature cards like She-Hulk, Quinjet, what else? Lockjaw. Seems like every deck that I played in the past to Infinite then got nerfed later. Doomwave was one I relied on last season, I mean. What were my decks? I'm actually not joking when I say that every deck that I've made had its Series 3 cards nerfed the month after I used it to get to Infinite. Well, it feels exploitive to only nerf Series 3 cards, and it feels like they're aiming for a meta in which only Series 4 and 5 cards are viable for their monetization strategy. Death used to be 912, now it's 812. Alright, well, it's still fine. That's a buff for Galactus, actually. And Death is not going to be really playable on anything else without Wave, I don't think. You won't see Destroy decks anymore. White Queen, text only change. Draw a copy of the highest cost card in your opponent's hand. Copy the highest cost card in your opponent's hand. Just a text revision to resolve confusion. Okay. And then bug fixes and some known issues. I don't think any of the bug fixes change anything. Sometimes they do. Yikes for this patch. Yikes. Broken trust. That's how I look at this. I no longer have any trust at all left in the developers. It waned with every patch they've made. And this really shatters it, so I think they're going to be attracting only casual players in the future, which is a real shame because I really like the mechanics of the game. And if they just cleaned up some of the locations that prevent you from using your cards, supported the competitive scene, and had like a fair monetization, I think the game could have a long and prosperous future. But every developer, every company really seems to be in pump and dump mode at the moment, trying to extract money from people like like there's not going to be a tomorrow. Frankly, it's tiresome. And I'm sad to see Marvel Snap join the ranks because it seemed like things were going to be different at first with this game. But it turns out they aren't. Anyway, thank you for watching.